let's roll up the sleeves and show you a very important trick. It's been a long day already, waking up at 5 a.m. to get blood work up with a migraine. But I wanted to show you this very important trick that I showed to my private clients that I think all of you will benefit from, and that is how to convert the dress sloper with a sleeve into a sleeveless design with a facing. So let's get started. The first step is going to my website and purchasing the 3-piece dress sloper set that you can download and print on your home computer. And I just have a inkjet black ink, so it's printing all 3 sizes in black, but if you have color ink, each size is a different color, and if you're missing a size, chances are you're missing the ink to that size. So just a side note on that. And I have the pattern pieces already taped together and cut. I will give you those video links in the description box so that you can make sure that you see those steps. But let's get started with the actual conversion of this with a sleeve to a sleeveless design. Let's back up for a minute. Let me show you a couple of dresses that are sleeveless on the dress form to demonstrate my point. So I put the Calvin Klein or the store-bought dress on the dress form so you can see that first. It is a stretch garment, but the same principles apply. And that is, if you can see here on the shoulder line, if you were doing a sleeve inserted dress, your shoulder line will go all the way to the edge of this point right here. It also will be looser around the armhole, whereas a sleeveless dress is usually snugger around the armhole and most likely actually higher underneath the arm than your traditional set-in sleeve dress. So this is just a little stretch number that goes over your head. And this one is kind of all stretched out. But as you can see, I've changed the neckline and made it a little bit wider, more like a boat neckline. And if you can see the shoulder line here, you can see that it's way up. The other one was about 1 inch from the shoulder and armhole level. This is almost 2 inches. It's like 1 5/8 from the edge of your armhole. It is also way up higher underneath the arm than your traditional sleeve, set-in sleeve dress. So playing around with the neckline, playing around with kind of pushing it closer or more halter shape is the first step in making a sleeveless dress design. Another main factor is the inside, and that is the all-in-one facing that cleans the neckline as well as the armhole all the way around so that there is no raw edges and there is no other bias piece. You can also see this is the front of the dress. This one is worn out. The little trick that I have is easing some of that excess that you see usually around the bust area into the facing itself. So let me show you how that's done on the flat. So here are the pieces. This is the front piece, front dress bodice with the side dart and the 2 center darts. This is the back with the shoulder dart and the mid darts, and the sleeve. roll out your pattern making paper wide enough for the pieces. We're not going to need the sleeve, so we're going to put that aside. And I'm going to just trace out the front and back piece out first, and then we're going to do the manipulation. Make sure you put in every dark point. Take the pattern pieces off and put in all of your darts and markings. So the very first thing you have to change or decide to change, and that is the armhole depth or length. In a fitted sleeve, you need that extra length in the armhole to fit into your sleeve and to give movement. There's also extra ease. This is a gusset sleeve, so this one has even more ease than normal underneath the arm to be able to lift your arm both in the sleeve as well as the garment itself. So you have to determine whether you want to go up a little bit or not. I would say maybe on mine, I'm going to go up like just a 1/4 inch higher. Keep in mind, this is not, there's no seam allowance on this. Just so you understand, this is my French curve, the only armhole curve that I recommend. And when you're doing a regular armhole, it has 2 dots, 2 holes. That's an indication of a perfect armhole because it usually lines up with the curve. As you can see here, it lines up beautifully with the dot, meaning that this dot most likely is where it ends, and the excess ease in order to put the sleeve in continues. You can see the dot here, and you can see the dot here. So that is the beginning of the shoulder and the end of the armhole approximately. This will change obviously in much larger sizes. So I'm going to go up, like I said, a 1/4 inch. When I do that, I have to redraw in that armhole. Let's redraw that in red. Like that. And of course it has to be straight when it comes to the side seam. And also, I'm probably going to go in, let's say, about 3/16 from that side seam. That is to take off that excess that is used for the sleeve and for the sleeve here. Let's do the same thing on the back. I'm going up that 1/4 inch because it was pretty high already because I don't make very low armhole in general for my patterns. And then I'm going to go back inside here on the back 3/16 as well, like that. So this was step 1 and this is step 2 on both. This is the back and this is the front. Now we have to do step 3. The third one is if you're going to determine whether you're going to make the shoulder line narrower, meaning you're going to give it more of a halter cut. I want to come in on mine, I'd say about 3/4 inch. I like mine to be kind of fairly inside the line there. So 3/4 inch on the back and 3/4 inch on the front here. Now that's step 3, number 3. Now you have to connect this line with this line. So I'm going to take my French curve again. I want to give it a nice flow, so I'm going to try to keep the shape here the way it is already, and pivot, 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 pivot till I get to that line. So now this is my new armhole line. I'm going to do the same thing to the front. Now cut on your new lines. At this point, this is still a basic sloper, meaning the neckline on this dress sloper is quite high. It's at the pit of the neck on the front, and it's at the backbone in the back. So you also have the ability to change your neckline, whether you want to make it lower, wider, however you want to change that neckline. So I'm just going to go ahead and put an arbitrary new curve here on the front. And since I have it 5/8 of an inch at the shoulder, I have to do the same thing to the back. I have to go 5/8 of an inch here on the back because these shoulder lines have to match. And then usually on the back, you don't really dip it low unless you're doing some low back design. So you kind of keep it up as high as you can on the back of a dress. So I'm going to keep it just that high. I'm going to go ahead and draw in that curve. All right, once you've determined your neckline, go ahead and cut that out. Most facings, we're going to do an all-in-one facing, cleaning the armhole as well as the neckline all in one on the front piece as well as the back piece. So usually the facings are about 2 to 2.5 inches in length. So I'm just going to map out where my facing is going to be. I want it to go above this, so I'm going to go ahead and just make this one a 2-inch facing. And all you do is just map that out. You want to do parallel lines to the actual armhole itself. So I'm making those 2-inch markings all the way around till we get to the shoulder point here. Then it's also 2 inches from the neckline. So I'm going to go ahead and put my 2-inch mark and then do little parallel lines or markings around that neckline. This is where it gets tricky. You can see that it would go to this point and this point. With a facing, what you want to do, I'm going to connect these dots so you can see what's going on. I'm just going to hand do it, freehand do it. Then it curves under like this and meets the front. It doesn't go all the way up. The reason why it doesn't go all the way up is because it would give too much bulk to the shoulder itself. So we have the front somewhat mapped out. The back, if you see the back, you can see that I have a dart here on the shoulder. That's going to interfere with my facing. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is close that dart. So I'm going to take that dart and take the dart leg that's closest to the center back, which is the center back. I'm going to move it over to this side, let it just concave. It's okay. It's not going to be perfect, but let's go ahead and make it like that. And then tape that shut. And I'm going to check very quickly to make sure that my shoulders match. And as you can see here, it's a little off. So I'm going to take a little bit off of this side and a little bit off of this side. Those have to be perfect. Now these shoulder lines match. Let's go ahead and do the back. And I'm going to draw those parallel lines as well, coming from the center back neckline, 2 inches. Okay, and now just leave that concave, that is okay. And I'm going to, on this side, give my 2 inches parallel to that armhole. Then use your French curve and try to follow those lines or markings as best you can with a drawn out shape. Once we get to this point, we're going to then do that other shape. I'm going to turn it this way and connect the back facing neckline to the armhole and shoulder. And we're covering where that dart is. So when the garment is made, this facing inside will be without a dart, and the dress itself will be with a dart, if that makes sense. So that is mapping out your facing. The other very important thing that no one talks about is when you have a very long armhole in the front. This is the front again. Sometimes this armhole is so long or so straight and your body concaves around this part. You sometimes need to actually pinch in a little bit where you would be easing. This is a trick, optional trick. So that when you map out this facing and when you actually cut out this facing, you will have the facing will be smaller than the garment itself, meaning you're going to ease in the garment into this facing, and that will help to keep it snug on the front armhole area. So that's one of my tricks. Okay, once you have that set, we're going to then trace this on to another piece of paper. Right, let's go ahead and weigh it down. It'll be a little bit easier. And then I'm taking my long prong tracing wheel, and I'm just doing it on my table. You can do it on corkboard. And I'm going to trace out my actual facing shape, just like that. On that side, and then I'm going to trace out the pattern itself around the armhole to the end of where that facing is going to be. I'm going to remove it, fill in the dots and lines like that. Now, just so you know, this is the center front of the garment, and this is the shoulder, and this is the side seam. So this is the center front. You either want to put this on a fold, so you want to put an excess so you can fold that underneath, or you need to cut this as one big piece with a folded piece of paper. I'm just going to leave it like that for now, and also note there is no seam allowance. I'm going to cut it out. And just so you can see that this facing, you add your seam allowance, of course, on the pattern. You want to make it a pattern, but that this is now going to fit nicely inside. When I take this little dart out, you can see, I can put it this way, you can see if I put it here, it's just a tiny bit shorter, meaning from about here to about here. You're going to put an ease stitch or a little bit of a stay stitch to ease this so that it will then fit into your facing. And so you have a nice snug armhole in the front. That's my trick. Let's do the back. Again, this would either be a zipper or an excess. We're going to go ahead and put that this way. weigh it down. Trace the shape out. It's off. Here is your back piece. Fill in these gaps or fill in these markings with whatever ruler works. This is to center back, either the seam allowance, excess. Let's cut this out. I'm going to cut this one out with the seam allowance so you can see that this is with the dart closed in the back. So when you have the garment made, or before you make it, the pattern, you'll have a dart here on your back pattern, but the facing will be clean without a dart. That will actually enclose that area, be stitched at the shoulder seam, and the side seam is cleaned as well. So that's how you make the pattern pieces in the facing. Like I said, this is before seam allowance. And this is to give you a demonstration with the seam allowance with the actual facing piece. All right guys, I think I'm going to stop there. You already learned how to make the adjustments on the neckline and the armhole on my basic block sloper dress pattern, and to make facings for that to have a sleeveless dress. The next video I'm going to show you how to cut and sew that facing so you understand the dynamics of how to do that. Meanwhile, get your sloper block pattern today. It's downloadable and printable on your own computer. Follow along. If you love this video, give it a thumbs up. Come on board, guys, and subscribe, and check out my membership on my YouTube channel. Premier members get to have a Zoom call with me once a month as part of the membership. Check that out, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.